I was 32 when everything I thought I understood about family cracked wide open. My name is Natalie, born and raised in the warm sprawl of Phoenix, a place where the desert sun makes promises that feel eternal. I built my life here piece by piece, starting with nothing but stubborn will and an endless stream of sleepless nights. The marketing agency I founded had become my second home, a space that grew out of empty notebooks and late coffee runs, where I taught myself how to transform ideas into campaigns that caught fire. I carried pride in every account I landed, every small business that trusted me to tell their story, and every late night that turned into a victory morning. Yet no matter how high I climbed, no matter how hard I pushed, I kept circling back to one impossible truth. To my family, I was never enough. Not as a daughter, not as a sister, not even as a person. When the phone rang that night, I almost didn't answer. My father's name lit up the screen, his voice already echoing in my memory with the usual requests that drained me. Money for this, help with that. Always urgent, always dressed in love, but weighted with expectation. But this time he sounded different. Warmer, softer, almost proud. He told me to come early, that the family wanted to celebrate me, for the first time in years. I heard a note of recognition I had been chasing since childhood. I hung up with a heart that stumbled against my ribs, daring to believe that maybe things had changed, that maybe this time was real. The resort glittered under chandeliers, the air filled with the hum of polite laughter and clinking glasses. I arrived in my favorite black dress, every step rehearsed in my mind, as if walking into a new chapter. This was supposed to be about my promotion to director, a title I had fought tooth and nail to earn. I imagined standing beside them, hearing words of pride instead of silence, for once being seen. A waiter greeted me at the door, handing me a small card. I glanced down, and the word nearly stole the air from my chest. Limited guest. Two simple words, yet they slammed against me like a wall. My fingers trembled as I pinned it to my dress, the edges cutting against my skin sharper than paper could ever be. My sister leaned close, her whisper sharp as glass. It means no food, just drinks. She pulled back with a smirk, as though humiliation were an inside joke between us. My mother's laughter erupted across the table, carrying high above the chatter of strangers. My brother stood at the bar, sipping his wine, his eyes lingering on me with a curl of disdain. In that instant, I realized it wasn't a celebration at all. It was a performance, a cruel reminder of where I stood in their world. They wanted my presence but not my worth. They wanted my money but not my success. They wanted me small in a room where I had fought to be big. I sat quietly, the hum of the party swelling around me, their voices bending into an echo I could no longer separate. My phone lay cool in my palm, a tool that held more power than they ever imagined. With one steady breath, I opened the account they had drained for years. The one I had convinced myself was a symbol of love, of family, of shared responsibility. In truth, it had been nothing but a lifeline they cut from me strand by strand. I hovered over the button, my mother's laughter still ricocheting in my ears, my brother's smirk etched into my vision, my father's indifference searing into my bones. Then I pressed deactivate. Just like that, their world shifted. Mine did too. I sat back, calm washing over me in waves I hadn't felt in years. No food on my plate, no warmth in their smiles, yet I felt more full than ever. I sipped my water, steady, waiting for the moment they would realize everything had changed. It took minutes, maybe 10, maybe 15, before their phones began to buzz, before pale faces turned toward me, before the first whispers of panic replaced their laughter. I said nothing. I didn't need to. For once, silence was louder than anything I could have spoken. My brother's phone lit up first, the screen glowing in the dim light of the ballroom. He frowned, swiping across it, his smirk dissolving into confusion. My mother's laughter faltered when her phone vibrated next, the glow washing her face pale. She leaned toward my father, showing him the message, her lips trembling as she whispered in his ear. His expression hardened as he pulled his phone from his pocket, his jaw tightening as the notification came into view. I didn't need to guess what it said. Access terminated. The account they had drained like a well had dried up at last. My father's footsteps cut across the marble floor as he approached me, his voice low but sharp, carrying the weight of control he had always believed he held over me. "What is this about, Natalie?" he demanded, holding up the screen as if it were proof of some betrayal I had committed. I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. I simply met his eyes and said, "Check your notifications." My words, calm and even, sliced deeper than any apology ever could. My mother stormed behind him, her face twisted into a scowl. "You're being dramatic," she hissed, her voice laced with the same dismissal I had heard since I was a child. My brother, louder now, joined in. "You can't just cut us off like that, Natalie. You owe us." His voice cracked with desperation, and I saw for the first time the fear beneath his bravado. I stood, my dress brushing softly against my legs, my voice steady. "Thanks for the drinks." With that, I turned away, their protests echoing behind me, their panic unraveling the performance they had staged. The glow of the ballroom dimmed as I walked toward the exit, each step carrying me closer to freedom. The Phoenix night greeted me, warm and vast, the stars above indifferent to the chaos unraveling inside. For the first time in years, I inhaled without the weight of their expectations pressing against my chest. I slid into my car, the hum of the engine grounding me, and drove away. Behind me, they would scramble, demand, accuse. Ahead of me, I saw only possibility. But freedom has a way of testing resolve. 3 days later, the knock on my door shook me back into reality. My sanctuary, my small Phoenix apartment, suddenly felt smaller as their voices bled through the walls. My father, my mother, my brother, faces twisted with anger and desperation, stepped inside before I could even offer them a seat. They filled the room with sharp words and louder accusations, their presence heavy and suffocating. My father paced near my couch, his tone thick with reproach. "You've gone too far, Natalie. At your own celebration, cutting us off like that." I met his gaze without flinching. "You invited me to humiliate me," I said, my voice even. "I just returned the favor." My mother's eyes flashed as she threw her hands in the air. "You're blowing this out of proportion," she said, her words wild, frantic. "It was a joke, Natalie. That tag was just a joke." I shook my head slowly, her excuses crumbling against the memory of her laughter ringing through the ballroom. That laughter hadn't been a joke. It had been a blade pressed against my heart. My brother leaned against the wall, his confidence stripped away, his voice shaking. "You've screwed me over. I needed that account." His words hung heavy, thick with something unspoken. "Needed it for what, Derek?" I asked, stepping closer. "The rent I covered? The medical bills I cleared? Or the extra you pulled without asking?" His eyes darted away, guilt flickering across his face. My patience thinned, My voice sharpened. What did you do with the rest? He mumbled something, his jaw tight, but my father cut in, his tone sharp. Stop interrogating him, Natalie. We're family. I laughed then, short and bitter, the sound foreign even to me. Family doesn't treat me like an ATM. My mother's face twisted, her words striking with venom. You've always been dramatic, she snapped. We raised you, gave you everything. You owe us. The audacity stunned me, stealing the breath from my lungs for a moment. Owe you? My voice rose as years of silence cracked. I paid your bills, I kept Derek's apartment, I funded Dad's dreams. I gave you $50,000 over 3 years. And what did I get? A limited guest tag and your laughter. My brother's head snapped up, his eyes wide, desperation breaking through. It wasn't just rent, he blurted out. I used some of the money for investments. Stocks, crypto, things like that. I thought I'd make it back. I thought I could pay you back. Anger surged, hot and sharp. You took my company's money for your gambles? He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I clenched my fists, the weight of betrayal crashing over me. All those years I had thought he was struggling, not scheming. You lied to me, I said, each word deliberate, steady, dangerous. You all did. My mother opened her mouth, but I cut her off, my voice firm, final. No more. No more money, no more favors, no more excuses. My father's face darkened, his tone dropping to a low growl. You'll regret this. We're your family. I walked to the door, my hand steady on the knob, holding it open. Family respects each other. You never did. They hesitated, their anger faltering into something heavier, something close to fear. My brother muttered under his breath, but I didn't listen. My mother glared, her steps faltering. My father walked out last, his silence heavier than all his words. I closed the door, the click of the lock a sound of finality. For the first time the boundary was mine, and it would not break. The silence that followed should have been comforting, but it settled around me like a storm waiting to break. Weeks passed, and I poured myself into my work, convincing myself that the distance I had created would hold. Yet betrayal has a way of multiplying. One afternoon, while sketching ideas for a new campaign in my office, a notification jolted me from my focus. My brother's name glared from the screen. A post on his profile, written with venom and crafted to wound. Some people get a little success and turn selfish. Ungrateful. The words coiled tight in my chest. He had tagged me, making sure the world saw it. My hands shook as I scrolled through the comments, my mother's name appearing with a crying face emoji, her words vague and heavy, so disappointed. My father chimed in with a comment of his own. Never thought my own daughter would betray us. The likes multiplied, cousins, neighbors, distant acquaintances, adding fuel to the fire. Their betrayal, once private, had become public theater. I opened another app, my heart pounding, and saw more. My brother had taken his bitterness further, calling me a greedy sellout, painting me as a daughter who abandoned her family. My mother shared his posts, her biography still boasting about being a proud parent. My father stayed quieter, but his silent approval appeared in the form of likes. Each word struck harder than the last, but I forced myself to keep reading, to gather the evidence of just how far they would go. This wasn't just family squabbling anymore. This was defamation. This was war. The phone rang, and the voice on the other end steadied me. Monica, my friend who had seen through their games long before I was willing to. Her words carried urgency. Natalie, check your email. A client tipped me off. Your brother has been talking to your competitor. My blood ran cold. I opened my inbox, my pulse spiking, and found the confirmation I feared. A colleague warning me that my brother had been reaching out to a rival agency, offering details about my upcoming campaign. He had tried to sell my work, my strategies, even my client list, anything to sabotage me. My heart twisted, but it was no surprise. The same brother who admitted to gambling away the money I gave him was now gambling with my career. I moved fast, fingers flying across the keyboard, locking down files, changing passwords, securing the servers that held years of my sweat and sacrifice. My agency was more than a business. It was my legacy. I would not let him destroy it. Monica stayed on the phone, her calm voice cutting through my panic. You need to protect yourself legally, she said. I nodded, though she could not see me. I know. By evening I had spoken to a lawyer, explaining the posts, the sabotage, the pattern of betrayal that stretched back years. Her voice was blunt, unflinching. This could be defamation. It could be breach of confidentiality. Document everything. So I did. Screenshots, emails, records, every piece of evidence gathered like armor for a battle I had never asked to fight. But armor only does so much when the attacks hit close. My inbox flooded with messages from colleagues and clients. Some sympathetic, some curious, others sharp with suspicion. The gossip had spread faster than the truth, and for a moment, it felt as if their lies were winning. I drafted a statement, short and professional. My focus remains on delivering great work for my clients. Thank you for your support. I posted it, neutral on the surface, but my chest burned with rage. They had taken my money, my trust, and now they were clawing for my reputation. I stared at my brother's latest post, his words like a strike across the face. She thinks she's too good for us. I wanted to reply with every receipt, every late night, every sacrifice I had made. But I didn't. I closed the app, breathing deep. If they wanted war, I would fight smarter. Not through rage, not through their games, but through my work, my success, and the law. Still, the damage spread like wildfire. And I knew it wouldn't end with posts. The inevitable happened, another request for a meeting. They wanted to talk, they said. To fix this, they claimed. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The diner was small, plain, a place chosen for its simplicity. No chandeliers, no ballrooms, just chipped tables and the smell of onions lingering in the air. I sat in the corner booth, my coffee cooling as I waited. When they arrived, my father, my mother, my brother, and even my grandmother Helen, the air shifted. They slid into the booth across from me, faces taut with a mix of determination and desperation. My father spoke first, his voice low, rehearsed. We need to talk, Natalie. His words sounded like a deal, not an apology. I leaned back, my face unreadable. I'm here. That was all I said. My mother leaned forward, her hands clasped tight, her tone softer than I had heard in years. We can move past this, your family, we don't want to lose you. Her words felt scripted, empty, like she had practiced them in front of a mirror. I remembered her laughter in the ballroom, her mocking posts online. The words carried no weight. My brother leaned in next, sharper, his voice dripping with blame. You're making us look bad. You cut us off. And now everyone thinks we're the problem. I tilted my head, almost amused at the gall. You called me selfish on social media. You tried to sabotage my business. Who's making who look bad? His jaw tightened, but he didn't deny it. Then my grandmother, her voice softer than the rest, reached across the table. Her hand found mine, warm, trembling. "Natalie, family is about forgiveness. We've made mistakes, but we're here to fix this. Don't throw away what matters." Her eyes, filled with age and sincerity, tugged at me for a moment. But then memory returned like a flood. The limited guest tag, the $50,000 drained, the laughter, the lies, the public humiliation. I pulled my hand back, my voice steady. "Family doesn't use each other. You treated me like a bank. Not a daughter. Not a sister." My father's face hardened, his tone sharp. "You're being stubborn. We raised you, gave you everything." I laughed, short and cold. "You raised me to pay your bills. I'm done being your safety net." My mother's voice rose, frantic. "You can't just walk away from us. We're your blood." I stood, sliding a 20 across the table, enough to cover my coffee, and a tip. "This is the last thing I'm covering, you've taken enough." My brother opened his mouth to protest, but I silenced him with a look. My grandmother's eyes filled with tears, but I turned away. The bell above the door jingled as I walked out, the night air wrapping around me like freedom. They had tried one last time to pull me back, but I was gone, and this time, I would not return. The months that followed felt like standing on unfamiliar ground. Yet for the first time in years, the ground was my own. My Phoenix apartment, once heavy with their voices and accusations, became a place of stillness. The silence no longer felt like punishment, it was peace. Each morning, I poured coffee in a kitchen where no one asked me for favors. No one knocked on the door demanding what they believed I owed. I sat at my desk, sketching campaigns, meeting deadlines, building momentum. The agency that had started as a desperate dream was now thriving. Each client win a reminder that I was capable of creating something lasting without their shadow trailing me. But peace never erases the past. News of my family trickled in through whispers, neighbors, old friends, the kind of small-town gossip Phoenix carries even in its sprawl. My brother had lost his job again. The debts he once tried to hide behind my money had swallowed him whole. Every day of work he skipped chasing failed investments had caught up to him. My parents had fallen too, their house slipping through their hands without the cushion of my money. They had downsized into a rental, the lifestyle they clung to shrinking to match their new reality. I didn't feel triumph at their downfall. I didn't cheer. But I didn't ache either. They had built their lives on my dime, and now they were learning to live without it. One evening, my phone buzzed with a message from my grandmother. Just a few lines, her words careful, tentative. "I'm sorry, Natalie. I didn't see how much they took from you." I held the phone, my thumb hovering over the reply. Her voice at the diner echoed in my memory, pleading for forgiveness, for family. But her plea had been tangled in a story she never fully saw. I set the phone down without answering. Silence, I realized, was a choice, too. And it was mine to make. Monica became my anchor through those months. We met for coffee every week. Her laughter filling the empty spaces where my family's voices used to echo. She reminded me of what real support felt like, steady, kind, without conditions. She had been the one warning me for years, the one telling me their patterns were not love but control, not sacrifice but manipulation. Now, she was also the one reminding me of my strength. "You're stronger for it," she said one afternoon, her eyes bright with certainty. And for the first time, I believed her. Work blossomed in the absence of their demands. The campaign I had fought so hard to protect from sabotage became the project that set my agency apart. Clients came in waves, drawn to the creativity and consistency I had fought to build. My days filled with meetings, ideas, laughter with my team, late nights that no longer felt like burdens but like investments in myself. I learned the rhythm of saying no, of drawing lines, of choosing myself without apology. Each boundary I set became a brick in the foundation of a life I was finally building on my terms. Sometimes at night, when the city lights flickered across the desert sky, I thought about everything I had given them. $50,000 over 3 years. More than money, it was time, trust, energy, years of carrying them on my back. They had mocked me, dismissed me, lied about me, and tried to ruin me. But in losing them, I had gained something greater. Clarity, freedom, self-respect. I realized that the pain of cutting ties does not vanish, but it reshapes itself into strength if you let it. Standing by the window of my office one evening, the Phoenix skyline glowing beyond the glass, I let it all settle in. My desk was covered with sketches, contracts, and plans for the future. This was my life now. A life not defined by the weight of their demands but by the force of my own determination. I had lost a family, but I had gained myself. And that, I knew now, was enough. The story wasn't about their betrayal anymore. It was about my survival. My choice to stop being their bank, their scapegoat, their limited guest. It was about becoming the main character in my own life. And this time, there was no turning back. The seasons shifted slowly in Phoenix, though the desert never truly changed. The same dry heat lingered. The same endless sunsets painted the sky in streaks of fire. Yet within me, everything was unrecognizable. Where once I had lived with the constant hum of obligation, I now moved with ease. Each morning I woke without dread, no texts demanding transfers, no phone calls wrapped in false affection. The absence of their needs was a silence that hummed with possibility. My days began with focus, not fear. And the weight I had carried for years melted away like frost under the desert Sunday. The agency grew quickly in that freedom. I hired 2 more employees, both eager and creative, their energy weaving seamlessly into the fabric of what I had built. Together, we chased ideas that once felt out of reach. We pitched bold campaigns, leaned into risks I never would have taken while worrying about bailing my family out of yet another financial mess. Clients noticed. Contracts piled up. My name spread further through Phoenix, no longer just a small agency scraping by, but a team shaping the city's voice. At night, when exhaustion settled deep in my bones, I smiled instead of cried. Every dollar now went into growth, into dreams, not into a void I could never fill. Still, ghosts lingered. Their words from months before would return in quiet moments. Selfish, dramatic, ungrateful. The kind of accusations that carve into you when spoken by those who should love you most. At first, I tried to reason with them in my head, rehearsing arguments I never had the chance to speak. But slowly, the truth sharpened. I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them my defense. Their words had always been weapons, and I no longer had to stand still and take the blows. In choosing distance, I had chosen protection. That realization was a kind of healing I had never known. One evening, Monica invited me to a dinner with friends. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and the smell of garlic and roasted peppers. I hesitated before agreeing, nervous that the old version of me, the one who measured her worth by what she gave away, might surface. But as I sat at that long table, surrounded by people who asked about my work with genuine curiosity, who laughed at my stories without mockery. I felt something new, belonging. For so long I had clung to the idea that family meant sacrifice, that blood meant loyalty no matter the cost. But here, in the warmth of friends who celebrated me for me, I saw that love doesn't take without giving. Real love uplifts. Real love nourishes. Real love doesn't humiliate you in front of strangers. News of my family's struggles reached me in fragments. A former neighbor mentioned that my parents had sold furniture to cover bills. An old friend told me she had run into my brother at a bar, drinking away what little he had left, his debts a shadow he could not outrun. I listened, nodded, felt the familiar pang in my chest. But I did not act. I didn't reach for my wallet. I didn't dial their numbers. For the first time, I allowed their consequences to belong to them. They had built those lives on my shoulders, and when I stepped away, their foundations crumbled. It wasn't my job to rebuild what they had chosen to destroy. One night, long after midnight, I sat on my balcony overlooking the quiet city streets. The air was cooler, carrying the faint scent of desert rain. I thought about forgiveness, about the word my grandmother had pressed into my palm at that diner. She had wanted me to believe it was the only way forward. But forgiveness, I realized, wasn't something I owed them, it was something I could give myself. Forgiveness didn't mean inviting them back to drain me again. It meant loosening the grip of their voices in my head, letting go of the guilt they had planted in me like seeds. It meant choosing peace without permission. As I leaned back against the chair, the stars scattered above me, I whispered it aloud just once. I forgive myself. And with those words, something inside me unclenched. Finally free. The future stretched wide before me, unknown yet promising. I no longer needed their approval, their laughter, their false pride. I had built a life on my own terms, and it was more than survival. It was strength, it was joy, it was mine. The months continued to roll forward, each one layering new stability over the chaos that once defined me. I found myself rediscovering simple pleasures I had forgotten to notice. Saturday mornings at the farmer's market, the smell of fresh bread and citrus filling the air. Long walks at dusk through quiet Phoenix neighborhoods. The desert sky painted with impossible colors. I felt present in a way I had never been before, as if shedding their demands had unlocked space inside me that was finally mine to inhabit. Work thrived in ways I hadn't dared imagine. The campaign I had guarded from my brother's sabotage became the talk of the city. It launched not with whispers of betrayal but with a chorus of praise. New clients came knocking, impressed by the reach and creativity my team delivered. I stood in boardrooms, confident and steady, no longer carrying the echo of my family's scorn into every meeting. For once, I wasn't distracted by wondering which bill of theirs I would have to cover next. I was free to focus entirely on building, creating, and dreaming bigger. And it showed. But success always brings its own kind of attention. At networking events, people sometimes asked about my family, curious in the way acquaintances always are. Do they support your work? Are they proud of you? The questions landed like small stones in my chest, but I had learned how to answer without letting the weight crush me. I smiled politely, gave vague replies, and redirected the conversation, not out of shame anymore, but out of choice. I realized I didn't need to share the scars of my story with everyone who glanced my way. My family's betrayal was not the sum of me. Still, reminders slipped through cracks I couldn't control. One afternoon, scrolling absent-mindedly through old photos, I stumbled on an image of my parents at a barbecue years ago. Their arms around me, smiles bright, as if we had been a picture of unity. For a moment, I almost believed it again. Almost convinced myself that maybe it hadn't been so bad. But then memory surged back, my mother's laughter in that ballroom, my brother's desperate confession about gambling away my money, my father's cold command to undo everything. The picture had captured a moment, but not the truth. The truth was heavier, sharper, and it lived in me as both warning and reminder. Monica noticed the shadows when they tried to creep in. Over coffee one evening, she leaned across the table, her tone steady. "You're not defined by them, Natalie. You've proven that." I nodded, the truth of it sinking deeper than before. She had been there through all of it, the unraveling, the rebuilding, the victories stitched together from nights I thought I couldn't go on. Her friendship was a testament that chosen family is sometimes stronger than the one you're born into. One late summer night, as I walked downtown after a client dinner, I caught my reflection in a shop window. For the first time, I didn't see the version of myself they had shaped, the one forever trying to prove her worth, forever waiting for approval that never came. I saw a woman who had faced betrayal and chosen not to break. A woman who had lost what she thought she could never live without, and discovered she was better without it. A woman who had said no, and meant it, and survived. And in that reflection, I saw the future too. Not one tied to their chaos or their judgment, but one unfolding wide and open, with endless possibilities waiting for me to claim them. Autumn settled gently over Phoenix, though the desert hardly dressed itself in colors the way other places did. The mornings grew cooler, evenings softer, and I felt the rhythm of change inside me. With each passing day, the distance between who I had been with them and who I was becoming stretched wider. I no longer measured my value in the number of times I saved them. I measured it in the freedom of choosing my own priorities, in the laughter that came easily with friends, in the success that grew from soil I had cultivated alone. The agency expanded again, and I moved us into a larger office downtown. The walls were still bare when we carried in our first desks, but the air vibrated with possibility. I watched my team settle in, their chatter spilling into the open space, and I felt a surge of pride so strong it almost brought me to tears. This was what I had built when I stopped carrying their weight. This was the life I had almost forfeited to their endless demands. I stood there, in the middle of that bright office, knowing I had chosen right. Yet even in moments of triumph, shadows found their way back. An email from a distant cousin arrived one afternoon, a few polite lines twisted into a guilt-laced plea. "They're struggling, Natalie. Maybe you should reach out." The words dug into old wounds, stirring that reflex I had trained for years, to fix, to rescue, to give. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, the urge to respond rising like a tide. But then I remembered every empty thank you, every cruel laugh, every betrayal broadcast online. I closed the message without replying. Their struggles were theirs, not mine. And I refused to drown in a tide I had already escaped. Evenings became my sanctuary. I cooked meals for myself, recipes I had once been too exhausted to try. I lit candles and read books that had gathered dust on my shelves. I sat on my balcony with tea, watching the lights of the city blink against the desert night. And I allowed myself to feel proud. Proud not just of the success, but of the boundaries. Proud of the silence I had carved. Proud of the woman I was shaping myself into. There were nights when loneliness brushed against me, reminding me of what I had lost. Family dinners, holidays, the casual comfort of belonging to a clan. But I knew those memories were painted illusions. The truth was those dinners had come with strings, those holidays with insults hidden behind smiles, that belonging bought at the cost of my dignity. I realized then that loneliness was not the same as emptiness. Loneliness passed, but emptiness stayed. With them, I had been empty. Without them, I was whole. Monica remained my constant, reminding me in her grounded way that healing wasn't linear. Some days would hurt more than others. Some memories would sting sharper than expected. But she never let me forget the progress. "You didn't just survive, Natalie," she told me one evening as we sat in her backyard under strings of soft lights. "You thrived. And it wasn't because of them. It was because you finally chose yourself." Her words followed me home that night, echoing as I unlocked my apartment door. I paused there in the quiet, letting them settle into the walls around me. For years I had believed that love meant sacrifice, that family meant debt that could never be repaid. But Monica was right. Thriving didn't come from giving everything away. It came from standing firm, from refusing to be used, from building a life where respect wasn't begged for but expected. As autumn stretched into winter, I found myself no longer waiting for their shadows to return. I stopped checking to see if they had posted about me, stopped bracing for another knock at my door. Instead, I leaned into the life unfolding right in front of me. A life unburdened, unchained, unafraid. Winter in Phoenix was always gentler than anywhere else. The air crisp but never biting. The sun still stretching long fingers across the desert each afternoon. It was during this season that I felt the final layers of my old life peel away. My days were full with meetings, deadlines, and quiet victories. My evenings were no longer haunted by the expectation of phone calls filled with demands. I began to realize how much of myself I had given away, and how much more of myself I had yet to discover. The agency thrived. The campaign that once seemed like a fragile dream turned into a landmark project that brought us more recognition than I had ever imagined. New partnerships formed, doors opened, and I stood in rooms I had once only dreamed of entering. My team celebrated each win with energy and pride, their voices filling the office with laughter and optimism. It wasn't just my success anymore, it was ours. And yet, in quiet moments, I felt the echo of the girl I used to be. The one who sat at her desk late into the night, hoping her family would one day be proud. I thought about her sometimes, with compassion, but I knew she was gone. News of my family still drifted my way. My brother's debts had deepened, his reputation unraveling with each failed scheme. My parents moved from one rental to another, their old life shrinking with every step. A part of me wanted to feel sorrow for them, but what I felt instead was distance. Not coldness, not cruelty, just distance. They had chosen their path, just as I had chosen mine. Their downfall was no longer my burden. I had tried to save them, and in the process I had nearly drowned. Now I had learned that saving them was never mine to do. One evening, as I sat in my office surrounded by sketches and contracts, I received another message from my grandmother. This time it was longer, filled with apology and reflection. She admitted she had not seen the truth, that she had believed their stories and dismissed my pain. She asked for forgiveness, for another chance. I read it slowly, the words tugging at me in ways I didn't expect. For a moment, I considered replying, but then I thought of the diner, of her plea for forgiveness spoken with their voices echoing all around her. I thought of the tears she shed while still clinging to the idea that I should return to them. I realized forgiveness didn't mean returning. Forgiveness didn't mean reopening the door. Sometimes forgiveness meant simply moving on. I closed the message, and let the silence speak for me. With each month, I grew lighter. My world became defined not by what I had lost, but by what I had built. Monica's friendship deepened, her steady encouragement anchoring me in ways my family never had. We celebrated milestones together, shared dinners that were full of laughter and warmth, the kind of connection that came without strings. She reminded me constantly of the strength I had always carried, even when I doubted it myself. There were nights when I would stand by my window, the Phoenix skyline glittering against the vast desert sky, and I would think about everything it had taken to get here, $50,000 gone. Years of sacrifice and silence. Countless moments of humiliation and dismissal. And yet, standing there with the city alive beneath me, I understood something I never had before. I hadn't lost those years. I had learned from them. I had carved strength out of betrayal, resilience out of rejection. I had chosen myself, and that choice had rewritten everything. As winter stretched on, I no longer saw myself as someone abandoned by family. I saw myself as someone who had reclaimed her life. Someone who had walked away from the illusion of belonging to build something real. Someone who had learned that love is not measured by sacrifice but by respect. And in that truth, I found peace.